My name is Nilofer Afridi Qazi. Thank you for coming to Kuch Khaas. Once again, I thank Kuch Khaas for hosting this series on Islam. This is the 4th talk that we've had in May. And inshallah, this will be the beginning of a dialogue on a very important subject. Today, we have again Shazreh Hussain, who last week also began a 2-part series on gender, Islam, and deconstructing patriarchy in the Quranic text.
Assalamu alaikum ji. As you know, this is the 2nd part of the lecture there are 2 lectures on gender in Islam, unreading patriarchal interpretations of the Quran. I see some new faces, so I just thought we would start again with the Surah Zumar. Those who listen to the word and follow the best meaning in it, those are the ones whom God has guided, and those are the ones endued with understanding. A verse of the Quran which tells us that more than one interpretation of the word is possible and exhorts us to follow the best in it. And as we discussed last time, surely the best has to be related to the Quranic values of love, compassion, justice, and equality. The topics that we are going to discuss today are the whole issue of witnesses. Are 2 women equal to 1 man as a witness? क्या औरतों की आधी गवाही होती है कुरान की रोशनी में? And the issue of parda or hijab. What does the Quran have to say about that? A 3rd topic that I was initially planning to discuss, but I don't think we can get to it because in and of itself it requires at least an hour, but maybe I will share a couple of things about that with you, is the issue of women's prophethood. क्या किसी औरत पे कभी वही नाजिल हुई? क्या कोई औरत नबी थी या नहीं? क्योंकि ये अक्सर कहा जाता है, even in development circles, as I work in development, कि भाई अगर अल्लाह ताला औरत को किसी काबिल समझते तो कोई नबी तो होती, कभी वही तो नाजिल होती, कभी अल्लाह ताला एक औरत से हम कलाम तो होते. So I don't think, given the time we have, we can go into that level of detail, but perhaps a little bit about that. Okay, so we will begin with, is a woman half a witness? Before we even look at the Quranic passages, let me ask you, what are the attributes that you would look for in a witness? You'd look for education. What else? Ji? Sanity, certainly. A standing in the community. Asru Rasukh wale, Sardar, MNA, MPA. Yes, yes. So you mean someone who has a reputation for integrity and honesty and credibility. Credibility. Good memory and good judgment. Absolutely. And do you think that either men or women have a monopoly on these attributes? No. So Allah Ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, do you think that Allah Ta'ala said that women are only half as capable as men as witnesses? I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's possible? This is Surah Al-Baqarah, and it is the longest ayat of the Quran, ayat 282. O you who believe, when you deal with each other in transactions involving future obligations in a fixed period of time, reduce them to writing. Let a scribe write down faithfully as between the parties. Let not the scribe refuse to write. As Allah has taught him, so let him write. Let him who incurs the liability dictate, but let him fear his Lord Allah, and not diminish any of what he owes. If the party liable is mentally deficient or weak or unable himself to dictate, let his guardian dictate faithfully. and get 2 witnesses out of your own men, and if there are not 2 men, then a man and 2 women, such as you choose for witnesses, so that if one of them errs, the other can remind her. The witness should not refuse when they are called on for evidence. This verse deals with financial matters. When you have deal with each other, in another translation, you will say len den, or it will say when you incur a debt. Can we have the next slide? That's in Urdu. Urdu, maybe I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but if you will, I'll just read out the first line. ऐ ईमान वालो, जब तुम किसी मुअय्यन मुद्दत के लिए उधार का लेन देन करो, ठीक है? There is no dispute about this, that this verse, among scholars, that this verse is talking about financial transactions. That is not contested. और नीचे अगर आ जाएं तो अगर 2 मर्द ना हों तो 1 मर्द और 2 औरतें सही, ये गवाह तुम्हारे पसंदीदा लोगों में से हों, 2 औरतें इसलिए कि एक भूल जाएगी तो दूसरी याद दिला देगी, और गवाह जब बुलाए जाएं तो उनसे उसे इनकार ना करें. Okay. Now, as we discussed last time, there is a context in which the Quran is revealed. So this issue of witnesses, call witnesses from amongst you, is not mentioned only in Surah Baqarah. It is also in Surah Nisa. It's also in Surah Al-Ma'idah. It is also in Surah Al-Talaq, and it's also in Surah Nur. In Surah Al-Talaq, the issue of, after a period of separation, reconciliation is being discussed, and it says bring 2 witnesses. No gender is specified. It's important to note, as Lina and I were discussing, that in the Arabic, the plural for men is the same as the plural for a group of men and women. The same plural will be used. In Surah Al-Nisa, in 2 places, witnesses are called for. Again, there is no distinction made on the basis of gender. And the same in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Bequests are being discussed. That's wills are being discussed. Charges of adultery are being discussed. The period when you decide, if you decide to reconcile with your wife, that is being discussed. Nowhere does it specify that it shall only be men. So let's go to Chadar and Char Diwari. So does the Quran tell us that women must stay within the house, and that they must, if they do appear in public spaces, they must be completely wrapped up or veiled to some degree? Does it say that to us? So that let's look at the range of interpretations. Let's look at the verses which are cited in support, and let's look at the range of interpretations. So first of all, the issue of Char Diwari. What is the basis of that? O wives of the Prophet, you are not like any of the other women, provided that you remain conscious of God. Hence, be not over soft in your speech, lest any whose heart is diseased should be moved to desire you, but withal speak in a kindly way, and abide quietly in your homes, and do not flaunt your charms as they used to flaunt them in the old days of pagan ignorance, Jahiliyyah. And be constant in your prayer, and render the purifying dues, and pay heed unto God and His Apostle. Next. ये उर्दू में है. ए नबी की औरतों, तुम नहीं जैसे हर कोई औरतें, अगर तुम डर रखो सो तुम दब कर बात ना करो, फिर लालच करे कोई जिसके दिल में रोग है, और कहो बात माकूल, और करार पकड़ो अपने घरों में, और दिखलाती ना फिरो जैसा कि दिखलाना दस्तूर था पहले जहालत के वक्त में, और कायम रखो नमाज, और देती रहो ज़कात, और इताअत में रहो अल्लाह की और उसके रसूल की. तो जहाँ तक ट्रांसलेशन का ताल्लुक है, similar, right? There's no difference. However, in the interpretation and the implications of this verse, there are very strong differences. There are those scholars, and I'm talking about men, not just women, like Khalid Abul Fadl, Javed Ghamdi, Dr. Farooq, Fazlur Rahman, who say that this verse is beginning by telling you, by saying that, O wives of the Prophet, you are not like other women. So the injunction that follows is not something that is supposed to be followed by all Muslim women. And as it says in books of history, as in Raza Aslan's book, that there is no record that Muslim women at the time of the Prophet were restricted in their movements. Why were the Prophet's wives, why was there this restriction? Because at that point in time, when this verse was revealed, one of the principal ways that the munafiqun had acquired of ruining the Prophet's credibility was by spreading slander about his wives. There was no public-private space divide. The Prophet, the wives of the Prophet, their houses, and the Masjid-e-Nabwi, it was all one area. And often, and the Prophet would receive everyone there. And often people would get up and walk into the Prophet's house on the pretext of getting something, some water or some other pretext, and then make up stories. So there were certain injunctions for the Prophet's wife, and it said in the Quran, again recognizing that they were being, that their mobility was being restricted, and this didn't mean they never left the house either. That's very clear from the historical records. But there was, in recognition that they had this extra burden to bear, because they had to set a very high standard, and they had to protect themselves from slanderous allegations, Allah Ta'ala tells them that you, for whatever good you do, will have double the reward of anybody else. Now, it starts off by telling men. Tell believing men to lower their gaze and to be mindful of their chastity. This will be most conducive to their purity. Ghadde basar and hifze faruj. More literally translated, to guard your gaze, and hifze faruj is to cover and guard your private parts, which here is translated as be mindful of their chastity. This will be most conducive to their purity. God is aware of all that they do. So men are told that God is watching you. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and to be mindful of their chastity. Okay, so up to there, for both, it is the same. Then there are some additional, although it does not say, and God is aware of all they do, doesn't tell women God is watching you quite in the same way it tells men, but there are some more details. And not to display their charms, the Arabic word is zinat. Beyond what may decently be apparent thereof. Illa ma zahara. Hence, let them draw their head coverings over their bosoms, and let them not display more of their charms, more of all the things in brackets are put in by the translator to further explain. Let them not display their charms to any but their husbands, fathers, and the whole list goes on. And let them not swing their legs in walking so as to draw attention to their hidden charms. And O you believers, all of you, turn unto God in repentance, so that you might attain to a happy state. Now, again, two schools of thought. In fact, more than two schools of thought, but two basic schools of thought. One, the people like Khalid Abul Fadl, Javed Ghamdi, Dr. Farooq, they will say that the injunction to Muslim men and women for all times are that you will guard your gaze. And this is not understood as you will never look another person in the face. So Muslim men and women are not allowed to look at each other. This is understood to mean that you will not leer at anyone. You will not look at anyone in an inappropriate, disrespectful way. And you will guard your chastity, meaning, very literally, as I said, it means to cover your private parts. That is for sure, for men and women, must cover. And more broadly speaking, about dressing decently. The additional instructions to women. Here, Abdullah Yusuf Ali tells us that in 7th century Arabia, there was a custom to leave the breasts bare. Women are told, khumr is a headdress that Arab women wore, just like the Arab men wear. Anyone who lives in a desert wears a headdress, men and women. And they are told to draw the end of that over their chest. Now, Dr. Farooq, Javed Ghamdi, Khalid Abul Fadl, and several others say that covering the head is not a Quranic injunction. Covering the chest in whatever way that you wish to do so is. Because the khumar, it does not say here that your head must be covered. It refers to a piece of cloth that Arab women traditionally wore and says, take that and cover your chest. And this interpretation has been there from the time of the first tafsir of the Quran, lest you think that this is something that people in the 21st century started saying. When Tabari wrote his tafsir, he simply understood by it that men and women should be dressing decently. But as time went on and Islam came into contact with the Byzantine civilization, with the Sasanian civilization, where the veil was a mark of class, it changed. And you have commentators then saying, interpreting the word zinat not to be referring back to the chest, but to be, they said, औरत की शक्ल भी zinat है, उसके हाथ भी zinat हैं, and it went on and on till basically it said that women really ought not to be seen. Maulana Maududi, in his book Woman and Parda, admits that the veil is not a Quranic injunction. I am quoting verbatim. He said it is not a Quranic injunction, but it is Quranic in spirit, according to Maulana Maududi.